Today's show brought to you by HP. I've often held that every form of linear or one-way form of communication is in fact going to become non-linear, but specifically two-way. So obviously communication to conversation is the simple and the default baseline of comparison. But even my book, even Join the Conversation, was two-way, where I allowed readers to actually become writers of the Join the Conversation blog. Another thing that I often do is in my presentations, I give the audio call-in number of my podcast. So I give my viewer or my listener call-in number and I say, hey, listen, if you've got a question based on this presentation, you can actually call that number or this number and I'll answer it on next week's episode. So if a presentation can be a conversation, then certainly your marketing communication can as well. Another example, Crayon's business cards. My title is a chief interrupter. So people look at the business card and they go, wow, chief interrupter, what's that? I haven't heard of that title before. If a business card can be a conversation, then again, your marketing and your brand can be part of a conversation as well. Well, Jeremiah Owyang, who used to work at Forrester and now works at the Altimeter Group, he has a very, very well-liked and trafficked blog called Web Strategist. And he came out with a blog post in response to another kind of Twitter kerfuffle at a conference where the audience turned on a speaker to basically talk about how speakers need to integrate social media into their presentations and how they absolutely need to step up the conversational aspect to their presentations. He came out with 6 points and I'd like to share those 6 points with you today. The first point is that now more than ever, speakers have to be prepared. You've got to know your stuff, you've got to rehearse, you've got to plan, you've got to be just absolutely slick and air or watertight. The flip side or the corollary to that is that everybody seems to want to be a speaker today. So there are people up on stage that really have no business speaking in the first place. The second point is understand the social media adoption and the technology or the technical prowess, if you will, of your audience. If you're at a tech conference, if you're at a social media conference, chances are, these people are going to be twittering up a storm and live blogging and taking photographs, etc., etc. So, buyer beware or speaker beware. You got to know your audience. I mean, that's rule number one with marketing, and certainly with speaking. And I think the point is you need to know what you're getting into when you actually get into it in the first place. Point number 3, monitor the back channel while you're speaking. And point number 4, they're related, is invest in resources to actually be able to respond to that. So what does that mean? Well, it means, occasionally, and I think Jeremiah talks about your buddy, Lauren, Robert Scoble, will take 15-minute breaks in his presentation to actually look at the Twitter comments and acknowledge them and be able to react or change course accordingly. The other one is not everybody can do this, but if you work with people in your office, consider having somebody or somebody that works for you or even a friend monitor that back channel for you so that they can flag or be able to communicate to you accordingly. I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with many of these points. I'm just going to have you know that off the bat, because it just makes me think about Seth Godin. Seth Godin, the man who said, I'm not going to allow comments on my blog because I don't want to change what I say or how I say it or the way I write based on how people react to what I'm saying. Whether you agreed or not with Seth, the fact is, I think if somebody's giving a presentation, which for the most part is still linear, for the most part, now suddenly they're going to veer off course or get distracted or get dissuaded or maybe demotivated based on the feedback of a few vocal people as well. The final 2 points are interact with the audience and ultimately practice what Jeremiah calls two-fisted speaking. I know what two-fisted drinking is. I'm not sure what two-fisted speaking is. Actually, what he's referring to is, I guess, having the mouse clicker in one hand and your mobile phone in the other hand. Again, my point with both of those is I don't have a problem interacting with the audience. I do like the ability to actually take questions from the audience via Twitter, for example, but, and I want to make this point again, I think that it is a good and a smart thing to make a presentation two-way and conversational, but not at the expense of the quality and the integrity of the content and the message in the first place. Remember, people that go to a conference go there to sit back and to listen to a keynote speaker, specialists, experts that know what they're talking about. To suddenly democratize that process to the point where it's hard to distinguish the speaker from the audience, I think is a big mistake. So certainly learn from what Jeremiah is talking about, take note of these 6 points, but remember the goal here is balance, not to go from one extreme to the other. At Jaffe Juice on Twitter, Jaffe@crayonval.com. By the way, when I give a presentation, you can Twitter as much as you like. I'm not really going to take notice. I'm going to focus on over-delivering, entertaining you, inspiring you, motivating you, educating you. That's why you pay the big bucks to hear me speak in the first place.